Hey there friends, welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm of course Paul Glasgow here, dealing you a vulgar display of logic and reason on a daily basis. Guys, how many of you out there, and I know there's a lot of you, have been called conspiracy theorists over time? I'm sure a lot of you have. I get it all the time. Let me ask you a follow-up question to that. How many times has it been confirmed that your conspiracy theory was factual all along? Me too. Third question. How many times has anyone who ever called you a conspiracy theorist ever apologized when all that information came out, validating you? Same here. Zero.
We were at a barbecue and it was getting crazy. When he started running at me, reached for the back of his pants, I just pulled out my firearm. Once the target was down so that he's not a threat anymore, I just called you guys.
The majority of programs immediately exclude you if you happen to be in a gun-free zone at the time that the incident occurs.
The strike force was called. If that doesn't happen in this case, he's still sitting at Rikers Island today.
Lawyers are like real-life superheroes because you can give people a chance to really get a second chance in life.
Folks, I use attorneys on retainer, and I suggest you do too if you carry a firearm or you do anything to protect your family. Use my code FTATF for a discount at sign up. My intro to the show is to point out one very specific thing. Today is an anniversary. An unusual and a somber anniversary, but nevertheless an anniversary still. July 10th in 2016 at 4:20 a.m. in Washington, D.C.'s Bloomingdale neighborhood, 27-year-old DNC staffer Seth Rich was murdered. The Metropolitan Police Department concluded that it was likely a botched robbery, quote, supported by a series of armed robberies in the area. But Seth Rich's watch, his wallet, his laptop, and his phone, none were stolen. Seth Rich was shot in the back twice by a robber who didn't steal anything. Now, why would anybody want to assassinate Seth Rich? Because clearly it was not a robbery. When you rob somebody, you rob stuff. You don't murder them. That makes it a murder, not a robbery. So what did Seth Rich know, or what had he done that would make somebody, anybody, especially in that cesspool skank dump of Washington, D.C., right? There were claims, many credible, although those are hard to find now, that Rich had leaked DNC emails to WikiLeaks exposing bias against Bernie Sanders and that he was killed by Democratic operatives or the Clintons. So that's what the conspiracy theory was at the time. We're talking about two different things here. They're trying to lump these together, make it sound like both things or all of them together are a conspiracy theory. Julian Assange even made vague comments, according to the media, stating the same thing, that Rich had supplied him with information. However, according to the media, no evidence supports these claims. Rich's laptop showed no WikiLeaks contact, and his role at the DNC made access to sensitive emails unlikely. Now, one thing you are going to recognize that we've seen before is that U.S. intelligence agencies and the FBI attributed the DNC email leak to, quote, Russian hacking, with 12 Russian agents indicted in 2018 for it. Doesn't that sound familiar, right? Remember that I just said intelligence and FBI both were part of stating that it wasn't Seth Rich who had leaked anything, that it was Russia. Remember, intelligence and FBI. I'll get back to that in a second. Now, one thing that was painstakingly done was to push that the Metro Police Department is who led the murder investigation. In fact, if you get online, whether it's Google search engine or any AI place that you might look for, and if you ask who led the investigation into this murder, everywhere will tell you that the Metro PD did. If you ask, in fact, if the FBI was in charge of it, they will tell you no, they were not, that the Metro Police Department was. But you got to dig a little bit deeper, which I did, and you will find that the FBI was asked by Metro PD to assist in the investigation. And they actually led the investigation in, guess what? This is going to blow your mind. The laptop and Seth Rich's phone. The two things that would house the most forensic evidence regarding any connection to WikiLeaks, or anybody else for that matter, regarding Seth Rich. The FBI said, no connection. Nothing here. You guys saw the more recent report that James Comey and John Brennan were going to be investigated by the federal government for wrongdoings, right? You've seen that recently, haven't you? No, I'm not moving on from this story. I have a reason for bringing this up. So you recall that more recent in the last couple days news break that Brennan and Comey both were going to be investigated. And you also just heard me talk about intelligence and the FBI both stating that Seth Rich did not leak anything to the DNC, that it was Russia who did it. Guess who was in office when Seth Rich was murdered? And guess who was in office during that time when the intelligence agencies, meaning the CIA and the FBI, both departments, stating that Seth Rich and the whole leaking thing that was accused of him doing that to WikiLeaks, that was all a product of Russia. Guess who was in office then? Reminder that Seth Rich was murdered in July of 2016. The Deputy Executive Director of the CIA from March 8th of 2013 until January 20th of 2017, about half a year after Rich was murdered, was none other than John Brennan. The FBI Director from September 4th of 2013 to May 9th of 2017, almost a year after Seth Rich was murdered, was none other than James Comey. Friends, this is an opportunity for the Trump administration to gain some clout back. This whole thing with Epstein, they lost so much traction. They lost traction because they lost trust. They lost the trust of the public, who was willing to stand behind Trump pretty much no matter what. General public knows that somebody besides Jeffrey Epstein abused those young girls. We all know this. I don't need the federal government to tell me that what I know is right or wrong, because I know these things. Like, I know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. I know these things. If somebody told me they didn't, I'd be like, sorry, you're wrong. I know that they do. I don't need a report from Pam Bondi or even Trump to tell me that Jeffrey Epstein did not have other people who need to be arrested. You can't tell me that. Nobody can tell me with a straight face. No one, the reporter that asked that question that Trump got mad about should not have asked that question. He should have said, okay, can you guys go on record stating that out of all the evidence that you've seen, there is nobody else who had any illegal contact with underage women besides Jeffrey Epstein. They can't do that because it would be a lie. So if anybody, I think that's an issue that's not going to get brought back up. Maybe Trump does some of this with getting rid of Pam Bondi, which he has to do. I'm calling for her resignation myself. I'll put a video out on that in a couple days. But if Trump gets rid of Bondi, he has a chance with that replacement to right the Epstein ship and do the right thing. But let's just assume that's never going to be addressed again, because they sure tried to make it go away yesterday, right? Shaming the reporter and anybody else who would ask about it. If they are going to investigate Brennan and Comey, at this point, I look at the investigation of Brennan and Comey as like, so what? You're liable to find all kind of stuff they did wrong, and what's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing. They might get a medal or some kind of a plaque stripped from them. They may get their pension cut by 10 or 12 bucks a month, but nothing's going to happen. Certainly no jail time, but no real repercussions. Why? Because there's a lengthy track record of how things operate over there. Nothing ever happens to anybody. That's why the American people get so frustrated. We can't fart in public without getting some kind of a misdemeanor ticket for it and a fine, and these people are diddling kids and nothing happens to anybody. But this Seth Rich thing, this should not be over. This got kicked to the curb way too fast. Way too fast. There's no way anybody can tell me that this man was murdered by robbers who didn't steal anything. And they shot him. If you know anybody in law enforcement, one thing that One thing they will tell you is sometimes people who are robbing other people don't even carry guns because they don't want that additional charge with them if they get busted for robbing somebody. So they're certainly not going to carry a gun. And they're definitely not going to shoot the person they're robbing. It's very unusual to have a career robber shoot somebody because they don't want or need that additional charge. So the fact that a robber would take the time and risk additional charges to murder somebody and not steal the very things that they were willing to shoot that person over. If they're there to rob them and they shot them, why wouldn't you take anything? That's why you were there. That's why you were willing to shoot the person, because you wanted their stuff so badly and you didn't take it. This is something that needs to be investigated further, and let's make no mistake, Seth Rich and I would not have been friends in real life, in his life. Let's just say that. He worked for the DNC. He and I likely had very little in common. But even when somebody that I don't agree with or get along with is done like this man was, that wrong needs to be righted. Our federal government is known for and continues to roll over people like Rich. And that's not right, guys. It's not right for guys to continue to get away with that. And there's too many red flags surrounding this man's death for me to sit back and think a robber shot him in the back twice. Think about this real quick before I let you guys go. Why would you shoot somebody in the back twice that you were robbing? Usually one shot is all it's going to take if you really want their stuff bad enough. But they saw the need to shoot them twice, making sure that they didn't just hurt the person or deter them from letting them or from making them fight so he would give his stuff up. They made sure that there were 2 money shots guaranteeing that he would lose his life right there on that street.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America.